This product right here provides easier accessibility for everyone. So here we have the Lippert Latch Xtend, and I have my good friend Connor here to join me to show you how our retail product experts at our local Camping Worlds would install one. Connor, my friend, it is all yours.
Let's get it done. Now, as we can see here, it's pretty basic as far as the tools go for this installation. You don't need an impact. A manual screwdriver will work just fine. If you don't have a file to clean up some of those holes, you could use a razor knife or even a piece of sandpaper. Really, the only thing you might not have is this hole saw bit here. This is a 1 1/8 inch. This is required. If you don't have a hole saw bit set, you can just run into town and pick one of these up individually like we did. But aside from that, it's pretty basic tools, so really shouldn't have to worry about not having most of these. For our first step today, we're simply going to be opening up the door, and we're going to be securing it to the back here. And if you have a screen, you'll go ahead and remove that from the door. So we're actually going to be replacing this latching mechanism. So what we need to do is we need to take a Phillips screwdriver. There's going to be 4 screws on the inside here, as well as 2 for our catch. So we're just going to go ahead and remove all these now. Now with all of our screws removed, the front side of the latch should come right out. Now, if you guys have a file, it helps to go ahead and just clean up the inside edges here of our latch cutout. Next, we're going to need 2 pieces of our kit. Number 1 is we have our template, and number 2, we have our guide tray. So what we're going to do is we're simply going to be closing our door here because we want to install these on the outside. And the way this works is you can obviously see this little notch at the top of your template. We're just going to line that up with the cutout in the door. Next, we're going to take our guide plate and insert it through there like so. Now, we're going to hold this against the door as best we can. We want to make sure it's even all the way down along the side here of the frame, because what we're actually doing is we're using this to mark our 2 pilot holes that we need to drill. So I'm going to hold this here as best as I can, and I'm going to take a marker, and there's actually a cutout in each of these holes here. Now, it's very important that this is as flush as you can to the edge here, or rather that you have an even amount of distance all the way across. So once we have it in a good spot, we'll just go ahead and mark both of those. So now that we have our 2 holes marked, we're going to come back with a 1/8 inch drill bit. We're just going to drill through both of those. Now we are going to be going through both sides of the door, so you want to make sure your drill is as level as possible. You also want to take your time with this. You don't want the drill bit walking, and you want to get it in the center of that hole as much as you can. Now that we have our 2 pilot holes drilled, we're going to come back with our 1 1/8 inch drill bit. Now, you guys want to take extra precautions on this step in particular because we can't do this twice. And as we're drilling into a nice smooth surface here, we need to take extra attention and make sure that everything is aligned and our drill bit doesn't walk. I'm going to go ahead and show you guys a quick little trick here that I like to use. Whether you've used a hole saw bit or not before, I do recommend this again because this is a surface that is going to show on the outside of your trailer, so the last thing we want to have happen is this drill bit to catch and it walk across the door. So for starters, you can see we have our drill bit in the center here. I'm going to drill very lightly just so that penetrates this first hole. And then once I do get through, I'm going to stop. So now that we have that through there, I'm actually going to be drilling in reverse just enough to make the outline of the bit here. So we're not going to be drilling through the door like this, but basically I just want to make a nice little divot, similar to how you do a pin punch, so our drill bit doesn't walk. So now you can see I have that outline made. So our bit should sink in there a little bit, and then we can just go ahead and drill on through. And again, same thing when we're making the pilot hole bits, you want to make sure that your drill is as level as possible. Now I am going to hold the door out a little bit because when I get through that second layer, I obviously don't want to drill through the screen on the other side. So I'm just going to go ahead and separate the 2. And we can continue all the way through the other side of the door. So So you can see we got this first one drilled out, and I think it turned out pretty well. So I'm just going to repeat those same steps over here on the other side so we can get that hole removed. Now you can see we have some rough edges here left over from our hole saw bit. I'm going to go ahead and clean those up with a file just as we did for this notch up here. Now we're going to take our latch assembly here and go ahead and install it into the door. Now at the top here, you do have to come in a little bit of an angle because of this latch and deadbolt here. So let's go ahead and line everything up as best as we can. Make sure you're in at the bottom as well. And then it should sit here and we'll get some fasteners in place to hold it. So now that we have the top partially secure, we're going to come to the inside at the bottom here. If you remember those two holes we drilled earlier. So this is simply the little plate that comes in the kit that we removed from the latch handle previously. And then we'll just go ahead and reinstall it using those same screws. Now when you're tightening your two screws here, you want to be careful not to over tighten them. If you start to see the door deform a little bit around this bracket, that's when you know you're too tight and you just need to back them off another quarter of a turn or so. So next, really all that's left to do is simply install the interior latching mechanism. Now there's a couple things to make note of. There's going to be 4 holes and it's going to be secured like so. However, we do need to align the deadbolt latch. You can see here there's a little keyway, and we also have to actually align this little tab on the locking mechanism behind this spring. So we're just going to install this and then verify it works before we install our hardware and secure it into place. Now if you have a helper to kind of help you hold everything together, that's great, but you can certainly still do this with one person. So now that I've verified both of those work here, I'm going to hold it in place while I loosely install some of my screws. Now, when we are tightening these screws down, we want to make sure that we do so in an X pattern so it draws this plate in evenly. Now, the final tightening I'm going to do with just a handheld screwdriver here. That way I don't over tighten these fasteners. Once it's nice and tight here, verify that there's no gaps around there. And then again, we're just going to recheck our latching mechanism and our deadbolt. See, the deadbolt works good, and then the latch does as well. So we've got everything secure. It's nice and tight. I don't have any gaps around either of these plates here. So the final thing is just to go ahead and test the door. Now, I do recommend having someone inside when you're testing this in case there are any issues and you can't get the door open, but we've already verified that the deadbolt works as well as the latch. So as long as everything lines up, we really shouldn't have any issues. And perfect, it all works out great.
Connor, thanks, man. That was awesome, dude. It didn't look too bad on a scale of like 1 to 5, right? 1 being easy, 5 being difficult. Where would you rate the Latch Xtend?
I would probably rate this a 2. Everything is very simple. However, when we're drilling our 2 holes at the bottom here, there's not a lot of room for air, and you do need a hole saw bit you might not have. So that's really the only thing I would say is even slightly challenging for this installation.
Okay, and for time, that again, not for yourself, but for an average guy like me, what would you say install time would be?
I would say most people can probably get this job done in under an hour. It's really not that hard. Just making sure that you're lining everything up, measuring properly, so you drill the holes in the right spot.
Awesome. And there you have it. So less than an hour, just a little bit of work, and you too can have one of Connor's favorite modifications to the RV door.